Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, March the 3rd at 6:30. We're meeting in the Robert Thornton conference room again as the elevator is still unavailable for our normal meeting space. And we're at the Norwood Town Hall at 566 Washington Street in Norwood, Mass. Before we start with business tonight, I'd like to start us off with our Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silent reflection. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, so we have a couple items tonight. And I think we were planning on starting with item 1.1, which is the reserve fund transfer. And this is for discussion and vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As approved by the FinCom, already we are requesting a reserve fund transfer in the amount of $50,000 for litigation costs, specifically related to Lennox LLC versus the Town of Norwood Planning Board, which is a recently filed court case. This amount of money will take us through the summary judgment phase, and then should the case continue on beyond that, we'll either be going to town meeting or coming back to the board and FinCom for an additional reserve fund transfer sometime in the next 90 to 120 days.
All right. Questions?
Madam Chair, I think we're all familiar with the item, and with that, I would make a motion to support the General Manager's request for a reserve fund transfer from the Finance Commission in the amount of $50,000 for the purposes indicated.
Motion made by Mr. Donnelly, seconded by Mr. Plasko. Anything further? Otherwise, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous 4-0. So then, did we want to take 1.3 out of order, maybe?
Yeah, we should probably start with the
Yeah.
staffing study before the budget,
Yep.
since that's what we're mainly here to discuss.
All right, so if we drop down to item 1.3, you should have a variety of materials for you. This is our public safety staffing study update. And we're also planning on taking a vote tonight on this topic. We have both chiefs here, and you also have the slides as we go through the FAQ, so that way we won't have to crane our necks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to go through we've made some changes to this public safety staffing proposal. We'll take the board briefly through those, show the new numbers, and then there were a number of questions that board members submitted. We're going to go through those questions, and either I or either chief will answer that question, and a chance for board members to discuss those questions, and then we'll talk about where we're going from there.
Great.
Okay, so on the fire side of the proposal, the original changes from the original proposal, we've reduced the float position, which brings the total headcount increase down to, sorry, it's actually 13 from 14. So we've eliminated that position entirely. Obviously, we feel it's an important position, but in terms of cutting back and going with nothing more, nothing less, we've eliminated that position. We're eliminating the increased ask for officer positions. We believe that can be covered within the budget, assuming a reduction in substitution, assuming we are staffed at the level we will need to be. There'll be less trade-offs, and if we're increasing staff, we feel like we'll be able to see a reduction in substitution. You'll notice that was in the original payroll report. We were a little bit concerned. We don't want to tell people, sure, we can reduce substitution, and then everyone's going to say, we'll just reduce it and call it a day. Assuming this go forward, we feel comfortable we can reduce substitution a bit, since we'll have the staff a little bit better. So we're going to, in addition to that, we're going to book $125,000 in substitution savings. That just reduces the total ask that we would need from the taxpayers, which achieves a new number. On the police side, we've reduced the headcount increase to 5 from 6, and we've sort of spread out the next 4 positions over the next 4 years, which was a request of one board member to say, look, if we're happy with 6, but we know we could possibly go as high as 9, how would this look if we did it over 5 years? We sent that to the board. The request is 5. The proposal now includes 3 sergeants, 1 additional midnight patrol position, and a detective for task force work. Those 3 sergeant positions will give us 2 supervisors on every shift. That's really what we're trying to target. The dedicated additional midnight patrol position will give us, bring us back to our staffing on a midnight shift of 7. That detective for task force work allows us to assign a detective full-time to task force work without depleting the detective pool, so that way when we have a major incident, we are full throttle with all of our detectives. We know sometimes we use the term split shift, and we just want to make sure we understand when we say a midnight sergeant, a day sergeant, a split shift, it's not just people hanging around. It's we operate 24/7, so we actually need we need an additional body to cover all 7 nights. So 1 sergeant assigned to midnights, 1 to days, and then the split shift will work the balance of the shifts between the 2 of them. We also are confident that we can reduce police holiday pay by about an additional $75,000, contingent on the additional staffing. We're unique in Norwood that we don't just pay all officers for all holidays. They have the option of taking time. When we're fully staffed, and particularly if we're looking at adding staff, that makes that a more likely possibility, that we're not ordering people in and not forcing people in. So that additional reduction will be contingent on the additional staff allows us to make that. Otherwise, we would have made an additional reduction in the operating budget. So those are the changes. That gets us to a net levy increase needed of $1.54 million. The impact on the average taxpayer is about $93 a year. That's on an average home assessed at about $720,000. So under $100 for the year, or about $7.80 a month is what it would end up costing the average taxpayer. Before I get into the FAQ, questions on the numbers, and some of the questions you may have about the changes might come up in some of the FAQs. We're going to go through these, and I don't know that I'll read the text directly, but I'll rely on each chief in particular case. So this question that came in is, the NFPA standard is a standard, not a requirement, correct? That is true. Its focus is on fire response for a 2,000 square foot 2-story home with a basement. Nor is a combination of such homes, but also 50% of housing stock is apartment structures, including large complexes. So I think this question came from, we're not quite what NFPA 10 standard says. What does that mean? Chief, do you want to provide the answer to this one?
Sure. So 1710 is a standard. It's a benchmark that they use nationally, and we're on the study that was provided to you. We're on the lower end of that on a 2,000 square foot home. But if you look at 1710 and the other 2 categories that are with it, we actually fall into category 2 as well, which actually requires even more people, which is for garden style apartments and strip mall type facilities. So the makeup of our community is we're on the lower end for the housing end, but that's kind of how it's set up. So.
And that would include sort of the large commercial bays along Route 1.
It would. So the third one is high-rise, which we don't have high-rise, but that's the 3rd phase, and that's even more people. So it's 28 on the level 2, and it's 35 or more on the high-rise.
So level 2, you mentioned garden style, but that also includes mid-rise?
Yes. Yeah.
One important fact to note here that the chief brought up, that the standard becomes a benchmark during wrongful death claims, firefighter injury, litigation, and OSHA-related investigations. And as one of those, we're now actually subject to OSHA. We weren't several years ago. So it's not a bylaw. It's not a law. It is a standard that we're trying to meet. One of the things I think you'll hear a few other times throughout this is it's important to remember one of the reasons we're bringing this forward is our call numbers are substantially up. So we've always operated in Norwood sort of nothing more, nothing less. We can, in many cases, operate on less than what's the recommendation, and we do currently. But when you look at our call volume increase and where it's gone over the last 5 to 10 years, that's prompting bringing this forward. And I think if I could just, before we get back to this particular item, if we saw other departments that saw a similar volume increase, I think we would be reacting differently. If the school department saw a 20% increase in the number of students, we would be hiring teachers left and right. So we're slow in doing this, but we're letting that call volume increase. It's come up. It seems to be staying there, if not going higher. And now we're just asking them to be brought again back to our around close to what's recommended. More questions on this specific question? We've got plenty more. Related to that, the report shows that Norwood's response time to calls is pretty good, 94% of the standard on average. Chief, do you want to take this one about the response time?
Sure. So I'm aware of what's in the report. I actually read through it again because I was concerned about that 94%. So the 94% is within 8 minutes, which is, we do. We have all of what we have there of what we can supply from us within that 8 minute time frame. But if you look at the actual standard, it says that you have to have the first crew of 4, which is 3 firefighters and a supervisor, there within 4 minutes, and we don't meet that all the time. Our average on that is, with that average that they gave earlier, is 5 minutes and 40 seconds. So we're just outside of that, but that's why that 94% is a little bit, in my opinion, misleading, so.
We can circle back to some of these if there are additional questions. The comparisons to other towns may be skewed towards towns with multiple stations which affect their staffing numbers larger due to multiple stations. Chief?
So, I can understand where that question came from, but in a lot of the cases when they've opened up a second station, they've had staffing and they've just reallocated staffing to that second station, not necessarily added. I came from a department that actually, we did that. We reallocated, we had 11 personnel uptown, we reallocated 4 down to this other station, and that's what opened up the station, and they cross-staffed 2 pieces of apparatus with that. So that is typically how it starts out. Adding more people down the road, yes, in some cases they have, to add more personnel to that station, but as a rule, it typically is a reallocation of people first, so.
We passed out some copies of this. The PowerPoint and the Word document are the same, they're just different formats, but it's the same material. On the promotion of 4 lieutenants, why are 4 needed now? We adjusted lieutenant staffing within the last 5 years. Why can't the current model of 2 lieutenants per group oversee the work of 14 firefighters? Chief Bailey?
Yeah, so it's basically putting another lieutenant on that other truck. So right now, we only have 2 firefighters on that truck. If we're going to meet this standard and get to where we need to be, there should be another officer on that truck. What ends up happening is the trucks don't always go together, so you don't always have all the lieutenants there together. So if that truck goes off and it's by itself, it doesn't have a supervisor with it, so it's a safety issue.
And that's happening now, right?
It is not happening now. Right now, it has 2 firefighters, so if we get multiple calls and everyone, the ladders in South Norwood, other engines up at the high school, and we're down at Moderna, the other engine has to go to Moderna, they're going with just 2 people on it.
No lieutenant.
No lieutenant.
Oh, that's what I meant, yeah.
And no third
lieutenant. Yeah.
firefighter, so that's what we're trying to get to. And that's why having the officer on that piece is important.
Right, okay.
And the other thing is when we have a fire or a large-scale incident, those crews stay together. So the Engine 6 crew stays together, Engine 5 crew stays together, the Ladder 1 crew stays together. They could be in multiple sections of the building. They're in charge of their crew of 4. Outside is the captain, who's the incident commander. He stays outside, and he basically runs the incident from the outside with feedback from his officers on all 3 of those pieces. So that's how it operates.
Could you, Chief, could you just tell us a little bit about what kind of qualifications one needs to be a lieutenant? That would be the first part of the question. And from an internal perspective, do you have the bench to promote 4?
So I'll start with the backside. Yes, we do have the bench for it. It's based on experience and time on the job. We have minimums of when you can actually move up to be a lieutenant. We have a minimum to move up to a captain as well, and to deputy for that matter. It's basically time on grade and learning the system and learning the job. And then they take tests and assessment centers to be promoted. And if they're fortunate enough to move up to that next seat, then they can go for more training as well. The Fire Academy has training, has a lot of officer training. There's different levels of officer training that they can afford themselves to if they so choose. Mm-hmm. And with the training component, which we'll get to later, that would help me to be able to send them to this training as well. So,
are they able to supervise across apparatus, or are they typically assigned to one piece of equipment? So
right now, we've got every group is either on a 2 or a 3-month rotation. Okay. And what that means is the firefighters stay pretty much the same on the same pieces, although they do rotate with the ambulance crew. But the lieutenants do 3 months on one piece, 3 months on another, so they're getting cross-trained on the different intricacies of both pieces of apparatus. Mm-hmm. So, and that is something that we do across all 4 groups.
And you have had instances where the 2-person crew has to go out without a supervisor?
That is correct.
So we send the trucks out with a supervisor, hopefully, preferably two, but we don't use any on ambulances
Supervisors.
for supervisors.
So, as you know, a lot of times we have the apparatus going with the ambulance. So the supervisor is there with the ambulance crew. So, and they assist and they run how that scene goes. So, in conjunction with the ambulance crew. So, ambulance crew is the primary with the patient, and then the officer oversees to make sure the rest of the scene stays safe. The crew is allocated to assist with patient care.
So that lieutenant controls, as you said, the scene.
So like yesterday's
Right up to the
incident.
point that the ambulance takes off for the hospital.
Correct. Yesterday's incident will be a good example of that, where,
I remember seeing that set up recently.
yes.
Other questions on this before we move on to the next one? Again, we can circle back. Risk assessment in FPA 10, we should determine our risk level and then examine our service level. For example, do we need staff operations to handle a house fire 24/7? So, Chief, you want to take we can take both of these, but then we can talk about what a community risk assessment actually does.
Yeah, so the community risk assessments, as I put in the document, are, they catalog specific risks. Large industrial facilities, bodies of water, major transportation routes, and vulnerable occupancies. We don't have the big bodies of water, but we have all the others, and I can tell you what the risk is from my professional experience. We can also have someone come in and do it for you if you so choose, but.
I think it's important with the community risk assessments where they're done. They're generally also just pointing back to 1710 for how you should staff to handle those risks. There might be recommendations there about specific equipment. Being 9 square miles, not having a lot of turnover in the fire department, and given our overall business level, I think it's different. If you had a community that was rapidly growing, it's probably something you're going to want to do every 10 years because it's sort of rapidly changing what's there. I always use the example of Frisco, Texas. I had a colleague who started there when they had 9,000 people. He's retired now after 25 years. They have 100 and something thousand people. So that's something where you're constantly doing it because you're bringing online new hospitals, bad example, new entire school buildings that you didn't have before. Our risk profile changes, but we're still these same 9 square miles with our 30,000 people. And then, Chief, just a question about working. Do we need to maintain staffing at the same level 24/7?
Yes, because I don't have a crystal ball as to when these incidents are going to happen. In an ideal world, if you could dictate when all these things would happen, then you might be able to massage the way you have your staffing. But honestly, with the call volume that we have throughout the day and evening, and even in the early morning hours, it's not possible. We need the staffing.
Fairly simple one here. The page 10 equipment list in the Power Report shows more pieces than we staff. And that's true. The equipment list shows all of the apparatus and vehicles that are in the department. They're not all staffed. So the list, and maybe we could have made it clear, is just what's active and what we have as spare equipment.
Right, that's the authorized vehicles for the fire department, both active and inactive. More, not inactive is probably not the better word to use, reserve. They are used, so.
Training officers, is it focused on firefighter training or EMS training? Does this require a different training for each discipline? With the increase in training staff, why would we stop on shift training? Could other training models deliver training more effectively and less costly? It's a $275,000 investment. Chief, do you want to?
So not looking to stop the on-shift training. On-shift training is extremely difficult to do because there's always some groups getting pulled out.
Interruptions, right?
Interrupted. On a smaller scale, we will be able to continue some of that with additional personnel. But the need for continuity with the training programs for each one, putting the programs together. Right now, we put out a program, and it's not even a program. We just say, you're going to train on ladders today. And each group inherently does it a little bit different than the other group. And I want continuity across the board with everyone doing it the same way, just like we did in the fire academy when we went through the academy. It was, everyone had to do it the same way, and that's what we're looking to do. It's the continuity piece. And it will cross over into both disciplines. All of our people are cross-trained. They all are either firefighter EMTs, lieutenant EMTs, lieutenant medics, depending where they are in the medical end of it. They all have that discipline as well, including myself. I'm an EMT as well, so.
Can I just 1 second? Kind of important, folks, and I hate to interrupt. Err on the side of caution, leaving. It's the 3rd time I've gone around the building, trying to keep up with it. It can't make its mind up. That's all.
Yeah.
Please.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
It's some tough spot, so
Yeah.
please be careful.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, it'll cross over into all disciplines. It'll also help us with our ISO rating. So our ISO rating is currently at a 3. ISO is based on your water supply and your fire protection. And a big part of the fire protection is the training component, which when we last got graded, just prior to me getting here, we did have some deficiencies on the training side that I'd like to clean up and try to get us to an ISO 1 is my goal. So.
So you let go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
So one of the things that we did in one of the earlier charts from our last meeting was to incorporate the 125,000 inside the budget now by using the substitution pay. So that actually is 125,000 that we would not be putting in an override request, for example.
Correct, so that is just basically reducing the total amount we're asked. We're saying, look, we need X million dollars, but we know if this goes through, we can move money around within the existing budget.
Because we're staffing at a higher level, we should see some advantages in our substitution budget. How'd you come up with 30, is 32 hours minimum the current standard?
There is no
for training?
current, there is no current
Okay.
standard. It's whatever whatever a community can afford.
Yeah.
Most of the fire departments struggle in getting funding for the training. So it's pretty much based on individual communities. It's not a standard of having to have so many hours.
And this would be, one more question though,
Yeah.
this would be, these 32 hours of training would be standard firefighter, or, I mean,
Yes.
is it mandatory? I guess that's my question. Would it be mandatory, the training?
I would like to see it mandatory, but yes, there's a lot of requests for training that I can't fulfill right now, and this would definitely help to fill that void.
The goal would for the bulk of it to be full group training. There might be cases where there's outside training that we want to send people to, but it's not just going to be, hey, you have 32 hours, use it however you want. The goal is to have a focused, this is what we're doing this quarter. Sometimes we're going to rely on outside agencies to provide that, but the idea of having the training officer as well as this is that we can actually prepare for that.
The training officer would be the person that's going to put together the specific curriculum for training and work with the teams and.
Correct.
Okay.
Could I just comment on that real quick?
Yeah.
The police, it's standard, it's 40 hours, and it's by statute. And one of the things the last few years that the police and fire have been trying to do is to work on active shooter training together, rescue task forces specifically. And I just went to a 2-day training with my deputy, and we've run all of our officers through. And I know fire departments across the board have trouble getting their guys to be able to, because they can't do it on shift. Like, so we did it down at the Coakley over the February vacation, and we burnt overtime to do it, but it has to get done, right? And so for the rescue task force piece, it's police and fire working together to go into a warm zone for an active shooter situation, extract people medically, and then work together to to do all of the things in a major incident. And we've always struggled to be able to get with the fire department because of budget issues. So this would be great for police and fire to be able to work together. So I think it would be a huge help. We have that capability because we have it built in our budget because it's a statutory requirement. I was stunned when I found out that the fire don't have that. So it caught me off guard.
And we'll show
My
on
2 cents.
a later slide some other communities in their training level.
Can you, I'm slow these days, can you go back and repeat for me or explain more fully for me the discussion of substitution and the eliminating of 125,000?
Sure. In terms of the overall cost projection, the Arrow report felt we could reduce substitution. We were nervous to do that. because we're gonna have additional staffing and we're not going right up to maintaining that entire level every shift. So we should be able to see a reduction in substitution
Based on what?
based on that we're gonna have additional full-time bodies.
You're still maintaining the minimum of 14 per group.
Correct.
You're gonna be staffing high, a couple more over that than we currently do.
Correct.
So it's theoretical.
Yeah, that I don't buy at all. And to just grab that amount of money, again, I don't know where the number is. We had some money left over 1 year. Next year we go way over it. Depends on what's happening. So to try to look at the 1 year and then make a recommendation like that, and I don't see that we looked any further into the situation. And I don't necessarily buy, quite frankly, that adding the personnel is gonna save on substitution. Having been involved in big substitution study years ago, there's inherent issues that make me suspect that that will necessarily work in our favor. That doesn't mean don't do it, but I want us to be realistic with ourselves too. And don't say we're saving 125,000 if in reality we're not.
We were cautious.
And one other thing I might have misunderstood. Did you indicate that you're doing that in this year's budget? Because none of this are coming to play for this year's budget, right?
We would only do it if this goes forward.
Oh, if it goes forward and it gets approved, it still will be for this year's fiscal budget. Okay, yeah.
Correct, we have to make that change. Jack Parrow in his report had a higher number than we feel comfortable using. He, I think, was at 400,000 he thought we could save. I agree with you, that's not going to happen. Half of that, if we're fully staffed, should be more reasonable.
And the mandatory training, would you repeat that again? It's not mandatory, or it will be?
I'd like it to be.
You'd like it to be, which means it isn't. Today.
Well, right now, we don't even have it, so.
Well, no, we do. We have in-house training that we're saying isn't quite adequate because they
Right.
sometimes get pulled off for calls coming and so forth, but we have training. So if we supply full-time training, and it's not mandatory,
I'll make them go.
and they choose not to come in, what are we training? What are we doing?
Then the money would not get spent in that case. I don't think that that's
Money
going
wouldn't
to
get
happen.
spent except for it be spent on the training officer for no reason.
Well, even if we didn't have the 32 hours per officer, there's a benefit to having a training officer who can conduct all of our training, even the in-house training, and who can maintain all of the different certifications and trainings that they do have. And I don't think it's going to be zero. There are going to be cases where you have some folks who are not meeting their full 32 hours. I think that's possible, but we've been fielding requests for training for years, and we've not been able to add it into the budget. I think a couple years in a row, we added 10 or 15 grand, and we have other years where we just couldn't do it, so I don't.
So I'm big on training. You, chiefs before you, police chiefs, every time they've come in and the monthly reports and talked about training and pat them on the back, it's wonderful, we want to hear more about training. But if we're not getting it, if it's not, it's not gonna happen right. Then we're spinning our wheels also. We don't have it today, you hope it will be. Sounds to me like, well, we're talking about contract negotiations. How many of these things we're talking about do we have to go back and negotiate?
I'd have to defer to you.
I don't want to get into the negotiating, but if we talk about
Sure. So
4 items, 3 items,
it
no
depends.
items.
Sure. I mean, it depends on how you want to do it. You don't have to necessarily negotiate it. I don't think the fire department, and the chief can speak to that, or we can ask the union area to speak to it. They're simply going to say, thanks for 32 hours of training, we're doing nothing. So we have some direction over our employees to direct them to go to training. Could we could we bargain a change that requires 32 hours of training? I suppose that's possible. Some towns do that, but everyone does it a little bit differently. Some, it's a flat amount that the individual firefighter has to use as they choose. That's not what we're looking for here. We're looking for to make sure we can train all of our groups as a whole group as much throughout the year as we can.
So again, I'm in favor, but I don't know if we're putting a horse before the cart, if that shouldn't be done before we know, therefore, what it might cost us and how much we should be budgeting for and planning for. What about the paramedics? You want to go from 30, whatever it is, to 44, 46? That's got to be bargained.
That's correct.
But that's not essential to increasing the staff. That was Jack's recommendation, that we increase the number of paramedics in the rotation. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the fact that we're looking to change the staffing level as a whole.
Mhm.
That was to reduce burnout.
Right.
It's a good recommendation, but it's not directly related to needing to meet a staffing standard that everyone feels is safe.
So, if I may, I believe that with the but currently we don't have the ability to do off-duty training with anything. And if we're able to get this and put it in place, I can come up with a program that will pretty much work around and make it so that everyone has to go. You run into a few things with, off-shift training with the whole group. If a guy's out that day, then I have to make that up. But I believe that if we can get the program and get it in place and have the person that's overseeing it, that we can make it work and make it work to the way that you're envisioning it as well as I am. So we have to get it off the ground.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the only thing I was going to add is, as far as the on-shift training, I just can't imagine the efficacy of having somebody trying to learn something, but then they get pulled off, and your mind just stack dumps that. You basically don't get the proper memory encoding of the lesson because you quickly shelved it in order to pivot to a more emergency, high-risk situation. So then when you come back to it, your brain has to start at the top and sort of walk all the way back down the lesson, and so it's sort of spinning your wheels trying to learn when you do that. And so having it not be just on shift, to me, is highly valuable because it's going to be more effective. So, any further questions on the topic?
Now, one more question just came to me. We hire a dedicated training officer. Will it be someone from within the department automatically? In other words, there may be somebody there, it's great to have upward mobility. But is this kind of a specialty area to really know how to do that properly so we get a benefit out of it? And what if there's nobody on the force that has those credentials, if you will?
I have
I don't
confidence.
know everybody's credentials.
I have confidence that we would be able to fill that from in-house.
Okay, thank you.
We may need to do some building there. I mean, we would want to take this training officer and say, look, at your first year or two, you're going to every train-the-trainer program that's available. It's hard now for guys in the crew to do that because they don't know when they're actually going to be able to use it. And sure, they might go to a train-the-trainer on something, and in 5 months somebody says, hey, come out to Westford, Mass. and do a training out there, and they're all excited. So it's hard to build that training person in-house when they don't have the opportunity to do it. We have a lot of people with different skills. I think it would be a successful position in the department.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, just to your point, I guess, and the chief can correct me because I'll probably give a bad example here. If you think about a new radio coming on board, you can do that on shift. You can pull people in a room, we got a new radio, here's how a radio works. When you're actually going to suit guys up and have them go into a building and practice, entering a building, that's where you can't just say, oh, all right, I'm about to kick down this door. Wait, we got a call. Let's all go down. Let's put everything down. Let's walk out. That takes hours and hours of time. You can't respond for that. So there are things we're going to continue to do on shift, but the complexity of what you're able to do is very limited.
Yeah. And my impression, at least on all of our public safety, is that most of our staff are very eager to get training. They're very eager to learn. They
Yes.
want to know the
Absolutely.
latest and greatest. So I don't foresee it being a huge issue to convince people to get the training because a lot of them are craving it, which is great. That's what we like.
Can I just bring up one other point?
Sure.
At the police department, we send our officers to become subject matter experts, and then they come back and teach the rest of the crew. So, you're getting not only the better training, and this would be the same for the fire, they'd also be getting people that teach legal, like I teach legal update, but when you learn how to teach something, you know it better than the other people. And if they do it year after year, if you run through the same program, which we have to by statute, it builds on itself. So just what we've seen.
That's excellent.
Just one other question would be, so the level would be anticipated to be a captain's level. I think that's from an earlier proposal, or?
Correct.
We anticipate that at this point, yeah. Still subject to some discussion and negotiation, but it would likely, you need somebody with a certain level of experience. You can't have somebody 2-3 years out of the job, and they're gonna need to be able to have both a command presence and the respect of.
Gonna need a job description.
Yeah.
Job description is gonna be a little different than
Correct.
the shift captains.
Sure.
Okay.
But it'll work functionally similar to the way we do fire prevention, where there's a captain and lieutenant in fire prevention. This would be a captain of training.
Oh, okay.
Great.
That's actually a repeat question. So on that, we sort of cover this. What we have here, just Canton has 24 hours of training, contractually obligated. Westwood 25. Walpole has 48, 24 of which are mandatory. So just picking a couple of neighboring towns, we're actually the odd duck out that we don't have a requirement for training and budgeted or contracted. And then I think we've answered the question on increasing headcount and doing more on-shift training. Is everyone comfortable with that? Giving Chief Bailey a break for just a moment and switching over to the police. First question is, we've talked about a task force officer. Chief Petty, if you just want to talk about how this works now, because it's something we do, but we're looking to build it into our permanent capacity.
Sure. We currently have one of our detectives working with a DEA task force. And DEA, all the federal task forces are really, the manpower behind them comes from state and local police officers. They can't function. So let's say you have 2 DEA agents who supply all the federal high-speed information and connections nationally to work on these bigger organizations. The bodies that are doing all the police work are usually state and local police officers, so generally local. And they work on attacking larger criminal organizations. In the case of DEA, they go after drugs. These organizations are multinational. Most of our drug dealers, they come out of the city. They're not living here generally in Norwood, but that does happen. But those big hits, where they're working cases that are multi-kilo fentanyl, have a big effect in the area. So we're trying to reduce on a higher level to pay our share into that pot. Most of the cities and towns around us have TFOs. And there's other task forces. So FBI has violent crimes. They have fugitive task forces. But we chose DEA because we thought the biggest piece that we could work on was drug reduction here in Norwood. And in addition, they also provide money to us for overtime. They'll pay that task force officer up to $22,000 in his overtime costs or her overtime costs, as well as portions of asset forfeitures. So, and those take a long time. But if you're part of if you're a TFO on a team that has $1 million hit, they split it up, and the town gets money that way as well. Not that that's the goal to bring in funds, but the ability for somebody that's working on a DEA task force to get a call from a DEA office in New York saying, we have somebody here in Boston and they're selling 10 kilos and they're working on that. Without those state and local police officers working with the DEA guidance, it just wouldn't happen. There's just not enough DEA agents out there. So that's how all these task forces, they cannot survive without state and local officers.
So my learning from the chart earlier was there is, I think in the last pieces of information, I thought there was a new position, but actually you have a detective who's working on the task force right now, and your ask really is to have a detective to fill in the detective ranks, but you already got the task force covered.
So we have multiple task force detectives working part-time. So we have the human trafficking, Jen Hoyle works on that. Tony Lopes, he is now gone full-time with DEA. I would love to backfill his position here in Norwood so that our detectives aren't overworked. So we stay at 5 detectives locally working cases. In addition, he's going to be working on the DEA cases, but a lot of what happens is these cases that aren't big enough, that he's going to be able to send, hey, this is going on in our NORPAC area, which is just local officers. They don't have the assets and the capability to work the bigger cases, but they do the kind of the mid-range drug dealer work. And so a lot of what he has at that DEA level will spill back down and will have kind of a second level effect. Cases that they won't take because they're not big enough, they kind of push back on to the local task force groups. So he was working with NORPAC, now he's with DEA. I'd love to backfill that so that we still have somebody at that mid-level working the Norwood, Walpole, Wellesley, they all work together on a Needham, they all work together on a regular basis. So.
And right now your situation is, if I'm reading this, is that 5th detective position you're rotating patrol officers?
Yes.
Okay.
Over the years, we've always tried to rotate patrol officers through investigations in order to give them the experience. But the problem is that that would leave us down one person that's, has experience. And the ability to send that person to the various schools that they really need to go wouldn't be there. So having somebody there consistently would still rotate patrol through, which would actually bring us up to 6. And then sometimes they use them as an extra body for surveillance, or when they're working cases that require extra manpower. But it's just not a good substitute for a full-time experienced detective.
One way to think about it is we're always moving the chess pieces around the board, but at some point we just need more chess pieces on the board to be able to do, or we're always pulling from here to do this and pulling from here and pulling from here and pulling from here. What's happened really the last 10 or 15 years, we've added SROs, we've added different positions, and you all of a sudden don't have your core capacity.
So it's really what's happening here. We already have a DEA detective you already assigned to him,
Yes,
which is leaving us short.
Yes.
So we're not hiring a DEA detective, we're hiring an additional detective because we feel we're short.
so what ended up happening is when we started talking about this, I made a decision that this was worthwhile to do. No matter what happens here, I decided it was worth committing to. I would love to be able to backfill that spot, but there was so many benefits to putting somebody in with DEA, I think, for the community itself. The ability to try and work on taking down these organizations. When you have a detective that's working in a group, they tend to want to focus on their communities. So, there's one in this group from Walpole and Norwood, so we're hoping that we're going to start to be able to dismantle some stuff in this area. If it was all Boston and Waltham, they'd probably be focused up there. So that's really, really why I thought it was worthwhile. So yes and no. So.
You've indicated that for those patrol officers that are on that 6-month rotation, it's a good learning experience for them. Would you be concerned about the loss of learning opportunity, or how would you fill the gap for building that skill base in the patrol officers to do detective work?
So when we're fully staffed, we have the ability to move somebody into BCI we used to do it on 3-month periods and give them the opportunity to kind of go through that. We call it a temporary assignment. It gives an officer that's on patrol a little break from patrol, because you can get burnt out on patrol. It's the same thing over and over again. Unfortunately, we haven't had the staffing to be able to do that due to injuries and retirements, and it's such a long ramp up for us to get somebody hired through the academy and up to speed. And it seems like every time we were ready to say, okay, we're going to run our temporary BCI assignments, that another shoe would drop. Somebody would go out injured, or, on a long downward retirement ramp. Sometimes somebody's out for whatever period of time and they're going to retire, but it takes a long time to get that done. And I don't have the ability to fill because, my head count is still taken up by somebody that's actually not working. So this will help on that as well. We will never go away from trying to run patrol and get them as cross-trained as possible. So that will happen. It happens less because I have less bodies. So what ends up, just to be clear, what ends up happening is when I run patrol short, it creates more forcings. And so officers, it's bad enough you're working on a Saturday night, and then all of a sudden now you're working a double and you didn't expect it. So because we're short. And if anything happens, if somebody gets injured or ill, we end up having to force people. So we're always trying to avoid that as well.
Thank you.
Questions on this question? Do we receive money from the task force? I think the chief already covered this. We will get a reimbursement for overtime, and sometimes there are additional forfeiture money that we're able to have access to. That used to be a much larger source of revenue and equipment for a lot of cities and towns. Last 10 or 15 years, it's really dried up, not just here, but everywhere. Are we comfortable and everyone has an understanding of how we handle detective staffing? The chief covered it. So that's the end of the questions that were sent in by board members that we've answered. We can discuss any of them that the board would like. Any further detail, we have the chiefs here. The floor is yours.
So just one question, Chief. The kind of positions that you're requesting tonight is a little different than the first rendition. Can you take us through the changes as you and Tony talked through to come to this point with this composition of the 5 positions?
Yes, please. So what ended up happening was, we put this together, I kind of came up with a wish list and things that I thought made sense. I did get some feedback through my staff, and one of the big things that came back was, more supervision. So, I listened to what they had to say, we talked about that a little bit more. And although we had one supervisor in there, it didn't make sense, when we started to think about where would we put that supervisor originally, do we want it on days, which is our busiest, where we really need that second supervisor? But on the same token, on midnights, the problem we run into is that if your sergeant is booking a prisoner and something else happens out on the street, it kind of becomes a problem as well. So, so it was a little bit of a balance. We need one here and we need one there. And then in reality, to make it work, like as far as staffing goes, if we don't have the split shift where one works 2 days, nights, and 2 midnights, then we're going to have 2 empty nights automatically. So what did we really solve? So it was kind of a progression, talking internally and then having some discussions with Tony. And then when some of the numbers started to change and the process started to change, he says, what do you want now and what's your priority? And that's kind of where I landed.
And you're still solving for your midnight problem with additional staff on midnight. And at the same time, better supervision with this model than your previous one.
It is, and the supervision thing, and I hate to talk about liability, but it's a liability issue. So, our officers have better guidance. We've had a lot of critical incidents. If one sergeant's tied up on, for example, I'll use the bus accident here the other day, I had a supervisor tied up there for a decent period of time because it was a critical accident. That supervisor has to call the district attorney, has to reach out to the MBTA, has to coordinate the investigation. And then what happens when something else kicks off, right? So during the days, it's a little bit better because there's others, myself or the deputy, or we do have some leeway. But on the night shifts and the midnight shifts, there's just nobody there. So that supervisor can't be in multiple places. So it really does. It used to be our model. Chief Brooks changed it because there was more of a requirement for a lot of administrative work. So a lot of our lieutenants, we used to have a lieutenant and a sergeant on every shift, and a bunch of our lieutenants moved up to deal with administrative stuff. So things like accreditation, training, and we just were really never ever able to backfill. We were able to do it a couple years ago. We added a second sergeant to the 4 to 12 shift. So now we run on that middle shift, 2 sergeants, and we've just kind of covered on the day shift, expecting that one of the superior officers would be around. But that's only good Monday through Friday. On the weekends, they're generally not there. So having the coverage full time and really making that part of the process is what really makes the most sense.
Thanks.
What was the plan next? In other words, if we had some questions on the original presentation, are we asking those now, or are you going back over the whole original presentation? Right now, I just went over some more current questions.
Well, yeah, these were all the questions that have been sent in. If you had any original questions about the original presentation or something we didn't cover, I think now's a good time to ask them.
Chief.
Sure.
There was a comment on the original recommendations to equip all the apparatus, all the trucks with equipment to be used as for medical response short of transport.
Correct.
There was no number of money amount.
So when we had the original study came out in draft form back in October, I went through it then, and I actually was proactive and took that, and we started the process of equipping both the ladder and the front engine, the 2 front pieces with officers, with ALS equipment. That is just about complete, and we have an April 1st start date. Right now is when we're looking to activate that and move forward with that.
And what was
It took us some time to get we used a lot of in-house equipment that we had. The drug boxes were something that we had to put together, but we're ready to go. And do you have if I may, Lieutenant Mike Chisholm is one of our EMS coordinators, and he's been instrumental in helping me to put this together. So
a lot of the equipment, especially like the cardiac monitors and whatnot, they have to be rated in a what they call a G-rated crash setting, so it locks into place those are to be installed in fire trucks. Just standing up 2 drug boxes, it's not as easy as just calling BI Needham and saying, hey, give us more drugs. We have, the paramedics carry 42 medications to include narcotics, so there's licensing with that, making sure that there are processes to make sure it gets checked. It's checked every day. Like the chief refers to the DEA, we have the mass controlled substance registration we have to deal with. As well as that, there were other things such as airway equipment, things that we did have in-house, but we had to make sure that we had it all set up so each ambulance, when a guy gets off the ambulance and rides the ladder truck or the engine, all the gear is almost completely streamlined. You don't really want someone looking around in a different bag they're not used to seeing. They're just on the ambulance the shift before. So a lot of that lead time was waiting for equipment to come in. Right now, like for example, I showed you guys a couple years ago the video laryngoscope. When we intubate someone, that was a 6-month lead time to get those in. We're not holding up on that, but there's other equipment that's like that, that extended that. But as the chief said, we are on the cusp. There's a few more state licensing things that we have to deal with, but that's very easy and we're ready to roll out.
I'm personally all in favor of that. We talked about the last time we had negotiations and we were going on that we wanted to strive towards that. But what about the cost? What did it cost us to do that?
I don't know the total cost. I can get that for you.
So we don't have to adjust this number?
No, I've been
The
able
work's
to-
already done and therefore...
I've been able to take that out of my current budget, so, and make it work with monies that I have, so.
So that doesn't have to change it?
No. We did, one of the last pieces was getting the tablets for both pieces, because we have to be able to do PCRs, patient reports, and especially if there's a refusal, they can do the refusals right from the truck now, so we had to wait for those just came in this week, so I know the cost of that was $3,200, but the rest of the costs I'll have to get for you.
I just worried about when we talk on budgets, what we don't want to overlook something, how small or large that number may be.
So one of the things that still remains a little bit of a question is the exchange of meds at the hospital and how we're gonna do that, because the apparatus doesn't go to the hospital. The ambulances do, the apparatus doesn't, so I'm working with the lieutenant on that, and we're consulting with other people, other departments that are doing it currently, and we're trying to come up with we will have a game plan
No,
before
we can't just
April
do
1st.
this on our own, right? The state has to approve this as a certain level of approval.
They do have to approve it.
We're already approved.
So
We've already filed a
so
license.
that whole process doesn't kind of include the point the chief just brought up about how we get replenished?
There just has to be a process in place. They review it every year. We have,
So we
every
come up
year
with a
the ambulance
process.
comes in, and it's a very intensive day of inspecting. I mean, they look for everything, a drop of blood, and they'll write you up on it. Part of that is reviewing our EMS policies, which includes drug security and exchange. It's just a matter of kind of having an audible for the fire trucks, like the chief said. We don't have an audible. If no audible was here, it wouldn't be a problem. But going to Needham, it adds a little bit of a change in it, but other towns around us are doing it. We're just trying to figure out of the other plans which one works best for us. But it's not a, it's already, I hate to say it's already accomplished, but it's just a matter of picking which one works best.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
All right. And I don't have further questions. Everybody's been really good about bringing forward information, and for the most part, everybody covered anything I would have asked. So no, I like this approach. Like Tony says, we try to do the right amount of what we think we need, and I think we've done a good job of quantifying what it is we need to cover what we have. So.
I would certainly describe it as what we think we need, not what anyone certainly would want. That number would be a significant amount higher. Do you want me to see if Mr. Sad joined us late remotely? Do you want me to see if he's able to?
Yes, let's
if he
see
can.
if he has.
Mike, if you're there, are you able to unmute and let us know if you have any questions? We had to set this up on the fly, so we might. Let me just send him a quick note.
Yeah, sure.
Just a moment.
While we're waiting for Mike, maybe before we go much further, we could maybe go back to the earlier slide that just shows the financials associated with the proposal as it sits today.
So these are the adjusted costs. The only change, I know it's a little tough to read on the screen there. Let me see if I can, I don't know if that's going to help. So the only changes that were made, it was Mr. Donnelly's suggestion, instead of just calling it 13 firefighters, it's the 12 line positions and the training officer. We do know that that salary will be a little bit higher. We haven't made any adjustments to health insurance or pension numbers. Those are still roughly the same. But we're costing everything out based on a little bit more than what an entry-level employee is actually going to cost us, just so we have some flexibility if we end up hiring mid-level staff. Ooh, I don't understand what. Nope, sorry. Not my normal laptop. Well, yeah, all right. Well, we're never going to be able to figure this out. I'm trying to.
I mean,
It's a nice color.
Yeah, Bill can help out. That would be great.
I'll go home.
There we go. So, I was trying to zoom in a bit. That $1.5 million number is what's needed. And again, the impact to the taxpayer, about $93 a year, $7.80 a month for a house assessed at the average of about $120,000 in Norwood.
So, looking at the last time we were here in the presentation, we were looking at a total levy increase of about 2.1. So we get that down to 1.5, and we've got the average levy impact under $100 annually.
Correct.
Okay.
My honest recommendation to the board, if it weren't for the confines of Prop 2.5, I don't think this would be as big of a discussion, but we can't add staff we should not be adding staff and deficit spending. Unfortunately, we've done that over different years, and it leads us to a difficult position. We just need to make sure that the money is in the budget going forward. If we tried to fund it with free cash, you're just going to eventually not have it there. I do know everyone's concerned about, okay, so if we do this and everyone says yes, what about next year when we need another override? We will have to cross that bridge when we get there. I just don't see any retreat from public safety staffing levels in town. It's just no way it could ever, we just can't do it.
Before we do that, can I go backwards?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Just looking at my notes and trying to put everybody on the hot seat here and get questions answered. We're looking for 18 per shift. We need to hire some bodies to do that. They're basically going to be paramedics.
They
So they're
all,
gonna be on the
they all will
ambulance.
be,
So they're going to be on the ambulances.
correct.
And also, the study said that you don't necessarily have to hire personnel. There's several different ways of reaching the standard 1710. Have we looked at those? Have we considered those? Why are those not acceptable replacements for just hiring more personnel?
Which ways, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with what you're,
The consultant,
yeah.
because
Sorry if we could. Mike, you're very, very low. If you could just kind of yell in there.
Yep, I'm good with everything. Everything sounds great. Keep up the great work. And it sounds like it's a middle of the road compromise with everybody, so that's a good start. And we just have to find the funding for it.
All right, thank you, Mike.
basically, I can't find it at this moment, should have marked the page. But basically, the consultant said there's other ways of reaching that standard. Mutual aid, pre-planning, he mentioned 3 or 4 different things. Have we
So the
looked at any of that as
mutual-
an
mutual
alternative
aid-
to just hiring more bodies?
Mutual aid will not get us to where we need to be with the timeframes of 1710. We use mutual aid all the time. It's the response times of being there within the timeframes that are indicated in 1710 that we can't meet with mutual aid. We use it all the time. I've actually beefed up our run card to accommodate for more people as well, so.
And even if it did that, it would answer our need for further additional
We need additional
ambulances,
personnel.
paramedics,
Right.
which is just a big selling point,
Mhm.
or need, I should say. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Somebody down the road's gonna get a copy of that report and ask that question, so
That's
we're gonna
fine.
be ready for it.
I will.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, and Tony, maybe it's more for you, but in terms of like the timeline of this, you alluded to it, hitting the budget, but town meeting in May,
Yeah.
and then,
I guess what we'd like is a vote from the board
Right.
sooner or later,
Right.
so we can move forward. It would go on the annual town meeting warrant. Overrides are always sort of supplementary to the budget, so we go through the budget, and then there would be a question, shall the town appropriate X dollars contingent on a Prop 2.5 override? And then if that passes, we would have the separate question for the equipment, which would be contingent on it passing. and then it goes to a ballot vote. We're hoping in early June.
Right.
We do need to know sooner or later if the board's interested in moving forward, just because we have to get ballots printed, we have to prepare for that.
Sure.
Similar to how we handled the last override and the debt exclusions, we just need time to line that up.
Yeah.
Of course, town meeting could always say no, the public could always say no, but
Yeah.
if we follow that timeline, town meeting approval in May, a ballot vote in June, the override's effective as of the start of the fiscal year. If we get that positive vote in June, 10 days after that, the vote is effective, we post and start hiring realistically right then
Okay,
to get
that's
staffed up
not-
as soon as we reasonably can. It will take us some time. I'm not terribly worried about the year one budget because we're not going to have everyone right on July 1st, but we would start the hiring process pretty quickly. Usually things like this are seen as a good vote of confidence. Whether they're transferring from another department, both firefighters and police officers like to see a community investing in their department, recognizing the importance. So although it's hard to find good cops and firefighters, I think we'll do okay in recruiting a few additional positions. With the goal of getting up and running on both sides as soon as we practically can, making sure we maintain some standards.
So that makes sense. In 2020, the same process would apply. You have a budget, actually the budget we're looking at this
Right.
evening.
Yeah.
And then a separate budget would be contingent budget, which would include these increases. So then
Yeah, it would-
2 votes from town meeting actually would be needed.
Correct, and it would come through as a separate warrant article that, move to appropriate $1.5 million, X dollars for police salaries, X dollars for fire salaries, police salaries contingent on a Prop 2.5 override. I think, Madam Chair, do you want to take any commentary from the gallery? I think there's a few folks who'd like to.
Sure. Chair will recognize me.
I thought he was gone.
He was gone. It's already in the paper 3 times now, he's gone.
He just announced yesterday he's not retiring.
He's gonna be the trainer. That's what he wants to do.
I just wanted to touch on a couple of the questions that came up, just from like our perspective. When the staffing study did come out, every single individual firefighter that put in a response to all the questions, one of their top priorities was training, and the lack of training that, it's just, it wasn't budgeted for us to really to hold the training that up to the levels that our brothers and sisters want. When it comes to training, a lot of the junior people are on the ambulances and also the ladder in the first due engine. And if you've got ambulances going out along with a piece of apparatus during training, nobody's really picking up on anything. Especially just for example, we're doing using the jaws of life. Do a training on that. Number one, you're tying up a vehicle to use that. And if a call comes in, you've got to shut everything down, pack everything back up, and then you respond. And it's just delaying, the service calls anyways. Also with the training, our members are going all the time out to Connecticut, New York, Florida, to get training on their own, on their own dime, and also they're using their vacation time to use these days. And a lot of these are younger guys, they're only in 2 weeks of vacation, and I'm sure the spouses aren't too happy that they're wasting a week to train when, they only have the 2 weeks. Also, the training officer, the one thing we would strongly, insist on is that training officer does come from within. We've got plenty of qualified people that could do it. The training that we do right now, the lieutenants that are on shift are the ones that are doing the training. When they're our lieutenants and our captains, they're always going to the fire academy, picking up classes. It does help with promotions, and a lot of this is on their own dime. And I think the last one was just the making the 32 hours mandatory. I think if we made it 150 hours and made it mandatory, people might but for 32, I don't think you're gonna have an issue whatsoever. Our guys are really hungry for this training, so.
Just that 32 hours, the way we look at it, it's a day a quarter. So an 8-hour day a quarter.
which is great. Further comments or questions?
Just in regards to 1710, our most recent fire, both our ambulances were out of town. One had to respond from the JP West Roxbury line, and the other one was coming from Needham. So, as the chief alluded to, the first response, 4 of our guys assigned to the shift weren't responding with our apparatus from the station. So,
One of the things that jumped to my mind, I hadn't mentioned up to this point, but I'm reminded from your many excellent trainings up at the senior center was, when I think about response times on fire, there's a change now in what materials things are made of and what materials our residents have in their homes, and the amount of time it takes for things to burn has wildly increased to a very quick time compared to what it used to be back in the day. So to me, response time becomes especially important.
So to your point, we have videos that we can insert within this program that show you how fast fire actually propagates, and it's kind of shocking to see how fast in the time frame to full involvement. So if that's something that you feel would be beneficial for us to add into this program,
It might.
just let us know.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times, if we're thinking about our own experiences through our life, for a lot of us, like when I was young, stuff was made of completely different materials than it is now. And it's like you think about like fires that I experienced, when I was a teenager, different time for all of that than there is now. And people might need that perspective to understand the difference.
Mhm.
And then just one more thing, sorry.
Sure.
Back in the study, back in 2011, I think it was it 11 or was it 6? I can't remember. Just going back to that, the average age of an old firefighter was 44, almost 44 and a half years old. We just kind of ran some numbers the other day, and it's under 40 at this point. So we have a very, very young department, and this training really, those are the type of people that are going to benefit more from it where they are. So they haven't had the experience on the job, and this guy I'll let him retire too. That number's
It's gonna get a little lower now that you're retired, is that what you're saying?
And the training component makes us a more attractive firehouse, I imagine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Helps with retention, all the things that we've talked about.
and also response times. You see the fiasco that's happened over in Westwood with their station, where the station was condemned, and now they're working out of that one station over in Islington. Their times are being delayed to the point where they're relying on mutual aid right now, and us being one of them. So you never know in this business. There's always things that are going to be popping up. That to be proactive is a lot better than to be reactive. So.
Absolutely agree.
One question, Chief
Yes.
Cotton.
Yes.
If I could. So as, hope you don't think this is unfair, but as you look at the 5 positions you're asking for, are there any among them that you certainly have a priority for? If you were to say what would be the most important need to be addressed through the staffing change?
I feel like that's a trap. The 3 supervisors, and the detective are the priorities. Could I live without another patrolman on midnights? I probably could. But, I'm just going to kind of go back to what we just went through over the last year. When we have a critical incident, we have to have police officers here. And a lot of our towns that are around us aren't running enough people on the shift, so when we have a robbery or something along those lines, the bodies matter. So I think that would be really difficult to, I was looking at 9, we're at 5. You want to go back down to 4, I understand that, but if I had to prioritize, I'd say the 3 sergeants and the detective would all be equal. And could I live without another patrolman? Potentially. Would it make sense? I don't think it would.
Thank you.
Yeah,
No
I'd
worries.
be a little bit worried about, like you talked about earlier, with patrol burnout as a factor, and so if we're sort of skimping on that, like I feel like we're sort of increasing the odds that we start having worse burnout patrols. So.
This is another, to go back to your question earlier, another reason that we switched our ask was our sergeants, that being a sergeant, you're that mid-level supervisor, right? So you're on the street, you're also dealing with upper management, and you're dealing with, they have a lot on their plate. So having 2 of them there to be able to kind of handle things, I'll just give you a quick example. the day sergeant comes on, and let's say we have prisoners that have to be brought over to court, so he gives roll call, then he has to, release prisoners, organize where things are going, if there's restraining orders or 209As or paperwork like that, that position is on the go all the time. So having the extra bodies there is really gonna prevent some burnout with that group of really the key people within the department, that middle management, super important. So, and can make the biggest difference in the response to a critical incident. We all, and this came up when we were training with the fire all show up at a scene in a group, right? They show up on a truck, and that's kind of how they respond. Police officers don't do that. They show up individually because we're all out there individually, but then somebody has to take command and control, and that's usually that street level supervisor, so.
Thanks.
Anything further? All right, well, I believe, Mike, do you have anything further?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Great, thank you. So I believe we're looking for a vote tonight as well, correct?
If the board would feel inclined, I think that would be positive. It lets us move in that direction. There's a lot of work to be done.
What you're looking for is to put an article on the town meeting warrant.
Correct. The board voting to support it would be appreciated if you so
Take
feel
a
inclined. I
position
mean,
tonight as well.
there'll be a yellow sheet, but obviously down the road. But I think if the board could take a position, at least lets us know we are done with that and we are moving forward in some direction.
I'd make a motion to support the revised staffing proposal as presented today, in addition to adding this to the town meeting warrant.
Do I have a second?
And we hold off on the actual setting of a date on the election part of it.
Yes,
Yeah.
because we're not 100%
Yeah, we're
certain.
not.
And Mary Lou would probably murder me if I said it, telling her ahead of time.
And
On a
Mr.
to be named.
Mr. Dowling, you
I'll
second?
second Mr. Lane's motion.
Anything further? Mr. Plasko?
Yeah, if I can make my speech. I think in this whole thing, I've been a little concerned, and maybe didn't speak up enough, but I've been concerned about the timing. I wish we talked about this a little more early as far as when we're going to town meeting, when we're having the election. I don't like the idea of having a special election. I think if we planned it better, we could be getting the vote at town meeting and then the election the month following and have it done. Unfortunately, we kind of waited for the study, but we knew this was going to happen, so we probably should have set it up accordingly and planned on getting all this detail that we've been getting more recently in the meantime, but that wouldn't have affected us getting the question on the ballot. But it is now too late, so we have to do what is being discussed now. But in hindsight, I guess, I wish we'd done it the other way, personally. The ultimate decision that we have to make as a community is what level of service is acceptable. Not desirable, but acceptable. And what's fiscally palatable level of risk for the community, and how much they're willing to pay for it. In my opinion, the information we receive, the testimony we receive from the chief and others, and studied the issue, this is something that we should be putting before the voters and trying to get support for. Ultimately, we may have to revert back to where we are if they say no, that it's just too much for them, if they choose the level that their level of what's palatable to them, I guess I want to say, is not the same level. But I think it's up to us all to, between now and election, or town meeting and election, to convince them of this need. Otherwise, we stay with what we have and do the best we can. But I'm in favor of it at this time.
Thank you. Now, anything further before I take to voting? And since we have a remote member, we'll need to do it as a roll call vote.
Correct.
So we'll start with Mr. Sad.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Sad is a yes. Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Plasko?
Yes.
And Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So unanimous, 5-0. All right.
Just to back on Mr. Plasko's point, one of the other things I think going forward is, and I think we've talked about before, but as we start positioning this for town meeting discussion and hopefully ultimately a vote. It's just some information regarding how level our staff has been for a number of years, maybe retrospectively look at the, when was the last time we did staffing adjustments for public safety? I think we got to find that it's been a long time.
I would agree.
If there's nothing further, I think we can let these fine folks go, get back to it, and then we will move on to our last item.
Welcome to stay.
Yeah, you don't have to leave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Drive
I have a
carefully.
feeling you have other things to do. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's all icy out there.
Yeah, we don't want an EMS response to the town hall.
We'll be able to-
When you actually go.
Thank you very much. 27th will be my last shift.
Yeah.
Hey,
More to go.
Thanks for everything, Paul.
2027.
Paul, thanks for everything. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so then our last item on the list is item 1.2, which is the general government budget, which is again for fiscal year 27 and discussion and potential vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Budget balancing settled on a number, if you will, which will fund the budget as presented to the board, so I'm just curious if the board, I have not received any questions from anyone, other than I think a few here or there that I believe I've answered. Are you prepared to vote on the general government budget, which includes the shared costs this evening? If not, I'd like to know when we can get that taken care of, so at least we can plan out the warrant and everything else.
The number, I guess just last night by the budget, yesterday by the
Yeah.
budget balancing committee, is that different from the budget you had been submitted, and if so, if it's less, where the cuts coming?
It is. When we met on the 11th of February, the balance for free cash was at 7.7. When we met this particular week, we got it to 7.3, just under 7.4. Mr. O'Neill came into our meeting with, we're solid, I guess we're solid on the GIC number at where we're at. I think we don't have to do much of an adjustment there. And the other area that he explained to us in terms of getting to that was that we did finance and Tony's team did relook at our revenue numbers and made some adjustments in some of our revenue assumptions, primarily in, and I have it here somewhere, primarily in the area of licenses and permits and ambulance fees. So there was a finance recommended we up our revenue assumptions there to help bring it to 7.4.
So it was a combination. The GIC, we were originally projecting at 11%. We've brought it down to around 9%. The GIC itself is projecting 8 to 8.5 at this point. 9 is kind of our comfort zone. Blue Hills was up higher than we anticipated, but between those and some reasonable revenue adjustments, I think as the board knows, I'm always trying to say, don't change local receipts, don't change local receipts. Ambulance revenues in particular, we have been blowing so far past our projection. It's a good thing. It means it generates free cash, but at some point we got to be realistic to ourselves. If we know we're going to take in $3 million and our policy is to try to be 5 or 10% of that, like we should be at 5 or 10% and not at 2.4.
Tony, could you go over the Blue Hills assessment again?
Yeah, so it went up about $500,000. And the challenge with Blue Hills is we have 18 more students in Blue Hills.
Right.
So their budget, it's funny, they could come in with a budget that's actually less than the number they had the year before, but our cost share is up. So the cost is relative to how many students we have in Blue Hills, but even as our number goes up, if other people go down, that's really when you get whacked. So that's why you have these years where this is a bad year for us, we're up 18 students. If we went up 2 students, we'd see a $20,000 increase and we'd all be like, yay, great job, Blue Hills. At some point, I do think we need to have the Blue Hills superintendent come in here and speak to the board.
I think that's a good idea.
And it's not so much that, the student number causes the cost. It's not like their budget overall is up 24%, their budget is up 3 or 4%. It's just we happen to have more students come up. But my concern is the state's changing the lottery formula. So it's gonna be more of a true lottery. And I don't know if Blue Hills has done any modeling around that, but I get concerned that we're sort of a medium participant in Blue Hills. Is this change to a true sort of lottery system going to lead to something where a town like Randolph that has a lot of kids in Blue Hills over a 4-year period loses 100 or 150 kids and we gain 100 or 150 kids? And I say Jill, the superintendent of Blue Hills is great. I don't know the numbers well enough to tell you that, hey, we had 50 kids we let in, but Norwood had 95 kids apply. Avon had 3 kids let in and they had 300 apply. I have no idea what those numbers are, but there has to be a way to do some modeling because I'm just concerned that all of a sudden is this going to become a budget buster on top of we had their school project a couple of years ago, which added $700,000-$800,000 to the budget. Well, now we're seeing a big increase. Okay, I get it, the student formula changes, but this could be it could just be that Norwood ends up with more kids at Blue Hills and Randolph ends up with less. I don't know what the impact is gonna be, and I don't want us to be,
Can they do that? Can they change the formula?
the state changed the formula, I should say, for all the VOTEC
But
students.
wasn't there a contract, if you will, for lack of a better word, between the communities when they voted to join?
And apparently the state has basically said that the admissions process is now truly a lottery. My understanding, you get some number of tickets based on how good of a student you are, so maybe I would get 1 ticket because I want to go and Bob's a good student, he gets 4 tickets, so he gets 5 tickets, so he gets 5 shots at getting in.
And if the lottery says we can have 100 students, but we only have 50 that are interested, we still pay for 100?
No. They don't let in all the students that apply, but now that it's a lottery system, they're losing that sort of decision. So we just don't know what the impact of that is going to be. If you had 10 towns in Blue Hills that all had 100 kids, you'd assume that the lottery would probably be 100 kids. But if we're not letting it, if Blue Hills is not accepting 20 or 30 kids a year from Norwood just because they don't meet the standards, well, now it's a lottery. Does it mean that they're going to be accepting those kids? In theory, you'd think that Randolph has 5 times as many people applying. Their size should be relatively the same. We just don't know. They're apparently your ball goes in and they spin it and they pull it. So I just get nervous that because Blue Hills' budget could be stable, but I don't know what's going to happen to those numbers, and I really would like them to do some modeling and
wash
say,
out badly in the statistical average.
exactly, like you just had a bad statistic and it's gone on, or what's up,
Yeah.
74 kids, and it's like, that's $3 million, like that's absurd. And I just don't know.
Put that on a future agenda.
It would be good
It
to
might
have
be
a,
worthwhile bringing them in. The admin team does a really good job explaining, how assessments.
Yeah.
And this is something new. I mean, my frustration was, but I get it, is even on the current process, it seemed like, we were building our budgets a month ago, and there was a certain assumption on Blue Hills on enrollment. And now that the assessments are in, we know there are 18 more kids going there, so that's jumping the assessment. It probably doesn't make a difference now since the system's gonna change, but, personally, even in the current environment, it would've been maybe not to know the exact assessment number that we're looking at, but at least, hey, the trend is that it looks like Norwood is going to be up 15 to 20 kids, and that would be helpful for us in terms of our initial budget planning.
and I'll talk to Jill, I'll own that, because we sometimes get the number ahead of time, but it's not tied to a budget number, so you have no idea what it actually is, but I'll find out when we can get that number and how soon we can know what the relative number is, because again, I believe it's, they focused on an October 1 count, but this is their next year, they know who's
Right,
going in
right.
there, so how soon do we know? I heard the number 18 maybe a month or 6 weeks ago, but if you don't know where everyone else is going, it's sort of like I need everyone else's number. If we're up 18 and everyone else is up a lot, it's irrelevant. If we're up
If
18 and
everybody's
everyone's
dropping,
down,
Yeah.
it's a double whammy.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll bring
Thank you.
Jill in a future meeting.
Mike, do you have any particular questions on the budget?
I think he's gone.
No, all good.
Oh, there he is.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we don't forget about you.
We will separately be voting on the water and sewer budget and the light budget. The light budget down the road. The one last thing we're waiting on water sewer is just the rate analysis, and we're transferring some responsibilities for the meter management over the light department, so we got to play that indirect game and the complicated. But the shared services and general government budgets are good to go if the board is ready to approve them. If you'd like more time, I'd recommend it just be next week so we can move forward.
We don't anticipate that even though GIC hasn't really published their rates, I think the public information thus far is that our budget's within the range that they're talking about.
Correct.
We still won't have a surprise hit.
Yeah, we still have a good buffer. We like to go about a point above their estimate or even their actual range, just because there can be a plan design impact that's a little bit higher. But their changes that they made seem to be across the board.
I mean, generally, I think looking at the memorandum that you provided us, Mr. O'Neill, to you from the 27th, does a good job kind of outlining where our large dollar increases were, where we've made some savings. It's a level service budget, but we do have some adjustments coming that we anticipated. Full pay now that we're responsible for the dispatch center, and another item that's really out of our control generally is the GIC insurance.
Yeah.
Got some good news in there, but workers' compensation, a few other cuts in the general government that we're doing. think all in all, I think it's a pretty good document for, I'm comfortable with it. If the board wants to wait another week, I'm fine with that too.
And then for my part, I could go either way. I'm comfortable tonight, or if people feel like they need a little more time to digest, that wouldn't bother me. I don't have any particular arguments to try to tip the scale one way or another or to make major changes. So I would be fine as well for tonight or next week, either one.
At this point in my career, I'm not gonna tell them how to cut 7 million, so let's go.
Okay.
Sounds like a motion.
So we're gonna have motion. So motion made by Mr. Plasko, we're gonna say?
Sure.
All right, motion made by Mr.
A second.
Plasko. And seconded by Mr. Lane. Any further discussion? Seeing none, another roll call. We'll start again with Mr. Sad on the motion. Are you in favor, Mr. Sad?
Yes.
All right, yes. Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Plasko?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
And the chair also votes yes. So unanimous 5-0.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that concludes the board's business for this evening.
That is correct. I have nothing further, so I will entertain a motion. Motion made by Mr. Plasko to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Lane. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Well, I'm sorry, we have to roll call that. Mr. Sled, are you in
Yes.
favor? All right.
Yes.
Mr. Lane, Mr.
Yes.
Plasko, Mr. Donnelly,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tony, for getting me on.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you,
We'll talk to
Mike.
you.